You're not my real dad anymore. My name is Thomas Davis, and my 12-year-old son just said those words to me in front of 50 people at his own celebration party for surviving kidney failure. Here's what Tyler didn't know when he introduced his stepfather as my real dad, and me as just the guy who used to be married to Mom. The kidney keeping him alive came from my body. While everyone thought I'd abandoned him during his medical crisis, I was actually unconscious on an operating table, giving him part of myself to save his life. For 2 years I stayed silent, watched another man take credit for my sacrifice, let everyone call me a coward while my surgical scar healed in secret, until his doctor walked into that party with my medical files and decided it was time everyone learned the truth. What happened next destroyed every person who had judged me. If you've ever been misunderstood while making the ultimate sacrifice, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to know where you're watching from and hear your story in the comments. Here's how it all began. July 20th, 2024. Tyler's 2-year remission celebration party at the Scottsdale Community Center. 50 guests celebrating my son's victory over kidney failure, and I almost wasn't allowed inside. Excuse me, sir. The security guard stopped me at the entrance. This is a private event. I'm Tyler's father. He looked confused, checked his list twice. I don't see Thomas Davis here. That's when my 12-year-old son appeared. Oh, that's just the guy who used to be married to my mom. He can come in, I guess. Just the guy. 2 years of $3,200 monthly child support payments. Just the guy. I walked into that room wearing my best shirt, a $15 clearance find from Target. Everyone else looked like they'd stepped out of a country club magazine. My ex-wife Edna had clearly moved up in the world since our divorce. They seated me at the kids' table, literally, with the 8-year-olds and juice boxes. Meanwhile, Greg Williams, Tyler's stepfather, sat at the head table like some kind of conquering hero. Everyone kept talking about how Greg stepped up when Tyler got sick, how he saved the family during the medical crisis. I watched person after person congratulate Greg on being such an amazing father. Dr. Jennifer Phillips from Tyler's school. Greg, you're incredible, taking on a sick child like that. Mrs. Henderson from next door. Edna's so lucky to have found someone who loves Tyler like his own. Each comment felt like a knife. Because here's what they didn't know. I take medication every 4 hours. Have for over 2 years now. The pill bottle in my pocket reads, Tacrolimus, anti-rejection. The prescription label shows my name, not Tyler's. But I stayed quiet. Like I always do. Thomas. Edna's voice cut through the party chatter. You're looking thin. I'm fine. Are you eating enough? You seem so weak lately. Greg chimed in with that perfect smile of his. Edna, don't worry about him. Some people just can't handle stress. Stress. If only he knew what stress really looked like. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to March 15th, 2022 in my calendar. The entry just says, surgery, 6 a.m. Below that, 6 weeks of recovery appointments, physical therapy, blood work, endless medical follow-ups that nobody in this room knew about. Dad! Tyler ran over, but he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to Greg. Can you tell everyone the story again, about how you saved my life? Greg stood up, basking in the attention. Well, when Tyler got sick, I knew I had to step up. His real father, he glanced at me, wasn't really around during that difficult time. The room nodded sympathetically. Some people actually glared at me, like I was some deadbeat who'd abandoned his sick child. I fingered the medical ID bracelet under my sleeve. Silver. Engraved with words that would change everything if they only knew. But I kept it hidden, like everything else. The important thing, Greg continued, is that Tyler had someone who was actually there for him, someone reliable. Mrs. Henderson shook her head sadly. It's terrible when fathers abandon their children during medical emergencies. I almost laughed. Almost. Because if she only knew where I was during Tyler's medical emergency, she'd understand why I looked so thin, why I take those pills, why I have that bracelet. But I said nothing. Just sat there at the kids' table listening to my son's stepfather accept credit for saving a life with my kidney. The irony was killing me, literally killing me, since I now had to live with one kidney for the rest of my life. But that was about to change. Because across the room I spotted someone I wasn't expecting. Someone who knew the whole truth. Dr. Patricia Moore had just walked in. Dr. Moore's arrival changed everything. She was Tyler's transplant surgeon, the woman who'd operated on both of us on March 15th, 2022. The only person in this room who knew the real story. But she wasn't here for a social visit. She was carrying a manila folder,
Thick, official-looking, the kind that contains medical records. I watched her scan the room, looking for someone. When her eyes met mine, she nodded, a knowing nod. The kind between two people who share a significant secret. Meanwhile, Greg was still holding court. The adoption papers should be finalized next month, he announced to the crowd. Tyler will officially be a Williams. My blood ran cold. Adoption papers. That's wonderful, gushed Dr. Phillips. Tyler deserves a father who's actually committed to being there. Edna beamed. Greg's been more of a father to Tyler than his biological dad ever was, especially during the medical crisis. The medical crisis. They kept using that phrase like I'd fled the country during Tyler's illness. If they only knew I'd been in the next operating room unconscious with my abdomen cut open. We've also started a college fund, Greg continued, already up to $45,000, something Tyler's real father never bothered to do. $45,000. I almost choked on my juice box, because sitting in my truck outside was a folder containing documentation of Tyler's actual college fund, the one I'd been contributing to since his birth. Current balance, $127,000. But if those adoption papers went through, none of that would matter. Legally, I'd become a stranger. A monthly child support payment, nothing more. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my banking app. The automatic transfer to Tyler's 529 plan, $800 every month for 12 years. Greg didn't know about it because Edna had never told him. She'd probably forgotten it existed. Dad, tell them about the vacation you planned for us, Tyler said, looking up at Greg with pure adoration. Disney World this Christmas, Greg announced. First family vacation we've ever been able to afford. First family vacation. I remembered the Disney trip I'd taken Tyler on for his 8th birthday. Just the two of us. 5 days. Cost me $4,200 I didn't really have. But I'd wanted him to have that memory. Apparently it didn't count as a family vacation because it was just us. Dr. Moore was getting closer. I could see her reading the room, understanding the dynamic, the false narrative, the lies everyone believed about who was the hero and who was the villain in Tyler's medical story. Tyler's kidney function is perfect now, Edna was telling a group of neighbors. 100% normal. The doctor said it was like a miracle match. A miracle match. If only she knew how miraculous. 98% compatibility. 1 in 10,000 odds. But not really a miracle when the donor was the biological father. Some families aren't so lucky, added Mrs. Rodriguez from down the street. They wait years for a compatible donor. Tyler got one right away. Right away, because I'd volunteered the moment we got his diagnosis. Didn't even hesitate. But the medical team had insisted on secrecy. Too much emotional pressure on both patients, they'd said. Better to keep it private until after recovery. Recovery had taken 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Edna thinking I'd disappeared. 6 weeks of her falling deeper in love with Greg's constant presence. 6 weeks of Tyler bonding with his real dad while his actual father lay in a hospital bed missing a vital organ. I touched my side, feeling the ridge of scar tissue under my shirt. 8 inches long, a permanent reminder of what I'd given up for Tyler's life. The best part, Greg was saying, is that Tyler will never have to see his biological father again once the adoption is final. Clean break, fresh start. Clean break, fresh start. Like I was some kind of disease that needed to be cured. That's when Moore reached our table. She was holding that manila folder like it contained explosives, which, in a way, it did. Thomas Davis? Dr. Moore's voice cut through the party chatter like a scalpel. Every conversation stopped. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward our corner. Dr. Moore. I stood up slowly. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I heard about Tyler's celebration and wanted to stop by. Greg stepped forward, extending his hand with that politician's smile. I'm Greg Williams, Tyler's father. You must be one of his doctors. Dr. Patricia Moore, Chief of Nephrology at Phoenix Children's Medical Center. She shook his hand but kept her eyes on me. I was Tyler's transplant surgeon. Ah, the woman who saved my son's life. Greg's chest puffed out with borrowed pride. I can't thank you enough for what you did. Dr. Moore's eyebrow raised slightly. What I did? The surgery? The kidney transplant? Tyler told me you performed a miracle. I performed the surgery, yes, but the miracle came from someone else entirely. Edna joined the group, wrapping her arm around Greg's waist. Doctor, this is such a surprise. Tyler will be thrilled to see you. Actually, I came to see Thomas. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. People started edging closer, sensing drama. Thomas? Edna's voice carried confusion and irritation. Why would you need to see Thomas? Medical follow-up, Dr. Moore said simply. Standard procedure for our special cases. Greg laughed, not a nice laugh. Doctor, I think you might have Thomas confused with someone else. He wasn't really involved in Tyler's medical care. Wasn't involved? Dr. Moore's voice carried a sharp edge. That's interesting. I felt the familiar weight of my medical ID bracelet under my sleeve, the prescription bottle in my pocket, the scar tissue pulling tight across my ribs. All the evidence of my lack of involvement. Look, lady, Greg's tone turned condescending. I was there for every appointment, every procedure, every sleepless night. Thomas here decided to take a little vacation right when Tyler got sick. A vacation. Dr. Moore repeated the words like she was tasting something bitter. 6 weeks, Edna added, her voice getting sharper. Right when we needed him most. Just disappeared. Disappeared. Dr. Moore looked directly at me. Is that what they call it? I stayed quiet, like I always did. But something was building in my chest. 2 years of silence, 2 years of taking the blame, 2 years of watching another man get credit for my sacrifice. Thomas has a habit of running away from responsibility, Greg continued. Always has. That's why Tyler and I have such a strong bond. When you're reliable, when you show up, kids notice. They certainly do, Dr. Moore agreed. Tyler's very lucky to have someone who showed up for him. The way she said it made Greg pause, like he was hearing something underneath her words that he didn't quite understand. Of course, medical crises can be complicated, Dr. Moore continued. Sometimes the people making the biggest sacrifices are the ones who seem the most absent. Mrs. Henderson nodded vigorously. That's very philosophical, Doctor. But Tyler needed someone present, someone committed. Greg provided that. Greg provided presence, Dr. Moore acknowledged. But Tyler needed more than presence to survive kidney failure. He needed a donor, Edna said, and thank God one became available. Thank God, Dr. Moore repeated, though I'm not sure God should get all the credit. Greg was getting irritated. You could see it in his shoulders, the way they tensed when he sensed his heroic narrative being questioned. Doctor, I'm not sure what point you're trying to make, but the important thing is Tyler's healthy now, because I was there when it mattered. You were there, Dr. Moore agreed, in the waiting room. Excuse me. You were in the waiting room during Tyler's surgery. March 15th, 2022, 6 a.m. I remember because waiting room families always ask the most questions. Of course I was in the waiting room. Where else would I be? Dr. Moore smiled. Not a warm smile, a clinical smile. Well, some family members prefer to be in the operating room. Greg laughed. What, like scrubbing in? I'm not a doctor. No, Dr. Moore said quietly, but sometimes family members participate in surgery in other ways. The room had gone completely silent. Even the kids had stopped talking. Everyone was watching this strange conversation between the doctor and Greg, sensing something important was happening but not understanding what. I checked my watch. 7:47 p.m. Almost time for my evening medication. The pills that would keep my remaining kidney functioning properly. The pills that proved everything. Doctor Moore was still holding that manila folder, still looking at me with those knowing eyes. Thomas, she said softly, how are you feeling? Any post-surgical complications I should know about? The question hung in the air like smoke. Post-surgical complications. Greg's face scrunched up in confusion. Post-surgical? Doctor, I think you're confused. Thomas didn't have surgery. Tyler did. Of course Tyler had surgery, Dr. Moore replied calmly. Kidney transplant recipients always do, but transplant surgery typically involves 2 patients, not 1. The room had gone eerily quiet. You could hear ice melting in drinks, the air conditioning humming, someone's phone buzzing on a distant table. 2 patients. Edna's voice was barely a whisper. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around my prescription bottle. Tacrolimus, the anti-rejection medication that kidney donors take for life. I could hear the pills rattling softly as my hands trembled. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, I suggested, but Dr. Moore shook her head. Privacy is what got us into this situation in the first place. Tyler came running over, his face bright with excitement. Dr. Moore, are you here for my party? Hello, Tyler. She knelt down to his eye level. You look wonderful. How are you feeling? Great. My new dad says I'm completely healthy now. Right, Dad? He looked up at Greg with pure adoration. That's right, buddy. Good as new. Dr. Moore's expression softened as she looked at Tyler, but I could see the conflict in her eyes, the weight of medical ethics, patient confidentiality, the promise she'd made to respect my wishes for privacy. But something had changed. Maybe it was watching Tyler call another man Dad. Maybe it was seeing Greg accept credit for saving a life with my kidney. Whatever it was, I could see her resolve cracking. Tyler, she said gently, do you remember much about your surgery day? Not really. I was pretty sleepy, but Dad stayed with me the whole time. Again he looked at Greg. The whole time, Dr. Moore repeated. That's sweet. And where was your biological father that day? Tyler shrugged. I don't know. Mom said he was busy with work stuff. Work stuff? I almost laughed. If you counted surgery as work. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward, her face flushed with righteous anger. Doctor, I don't think we need to rehash Tyler's abandonment issues. Greg stepped up when Thomas stepped out. That's all that matters. Stepped out, Dr. Moore mused. Interesting choice of words. I pulled my sleeve up slightly, just enough to see the edge of my medical ID bracelet. Silver chain, engraved plate. If anyone looked closely, they could read the first few letters, Living K. But nobody was looking at me. They were all focused on Dr. Moore, sensing she was building towards something significant. Doctor, Greg said, his voice taking on a sharper edge, I'm not sure what you're implying, but Thomas made his choice. He chose not to be involved in his son's medical crisis. Not involved. Dr. Moore set her manila folder down on the nearest table. It made a soft thud, heavy with documents. That's fascinating. Edna stepped protectively closer to Greg. Thomas disappeared for 6 weeks? 6 weeks? Right when Tyler needed surgery and recovery care? 6 weeks, Dr. Moore nodded. That's about right for a full recovery. Recovery from what? Greg demanded. Dr. Moore looked directly at me. Thomas, have you been taking your medication regularly? Every 4 hours, I replied quietly. What medication? Edna's voice was sharp with confusion. I pulled the prescription bottle from my pocket, held it up so everyone could see. Tacrolimus. Anti-rejection medication. Anti-rejection? Mrs. Henderson looked puzzled. But Tyler takes different medication. Tyler takes immunosuppressants, Dr. Moore explained. Recipients of transplanted organs take medication to prevent their body from rejecting the new organ. Right, Greg said impatiently. So why is Thomas taking anti-rejection medication? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Dr. Moore looked around the room. 50 faces staring back at her. Tyler's bright, confused eyes. Edna's growing alarm. Greg's stubborn ignorance. Because, she said slowly, donors also take anti-rejection medication to help their remaining kidney compensate for the missing one. Missing one. The words hit the room like a physical force. I watched understanding dawn on faces throughout the crowd. Slow, horrifying, complete. Missing one? Edna's voice was barely audible. I unbuttoned the bottom 2 buttons of my shirt, just enough to show the edge of my surgical scar. 8 inches of raised pink tissue running along my left side. This is from March 15th, 2022, I said quietly. Laparoscopic nephrectomy, kidney removal. Tyler's eyes went wide. You had surgery? We both had surgery, Tyler. On the same day. At the same time. Greg was staring at my scar like it was a snake. That doesn't mean... It means exactly what you think it means, Dr. Moore said firmly. Thomas didn't disappear during Tyler's medical crisis. He was in the operating room next door, donating his kidney to save his son's life. The silence that followed was deafening. Ice clinked in glasses. Someone's chair creaked. A child laughed in the distance, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding. Tyler reached out, his small finger tracing the air near my scar. Not quite touching, just staring. That's mine, he whispered. Part of me is part of you, I said softly. Always will be. Greg's face had gone completely white. But you said the waiting list. There was no waiting list, Dr. Moore explained. Compatible living donors take priority. Thomas volunteered the moment Tyler was diagnosed. Edna's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, Thomas, But I wasn't looking at Edna. I was looking at Tyler, my son, who was staring at my scar with wonder and horror and something that might have been understanding. Dad, he said quietly. For the first time in 2 years he was talking to me. Dad, you gave me your kidney? Tyler's voice was small, confused, but for the first time in 2 years the word Dad was directed at me. The party guests formed a loose circle around us like spectators at an accident. Some had their phones out, recording. Others just stared in stunned silence. Greg stepped between Tyler and me, his face flushed red. "Hold on, just hold on. This is impossible. Edna, tell them this is impossible." But Edna couldn't speak. She was staring at my scar, at the prescription bottle in my hand, at Dr. Moore's manila folder full of evidence. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Greg," I said quietly, "it's not impossible. It's documented." "Documented?" His voice cracked slightly. "What documentation? Show me documentation." Dr. Moore reached for her folder. "I have surgical records, consent forms, compatibility tests, post-operative reports." "No." Greg's voice got louder. "No, this is insane. Thomas abandoned Tyler. He disappeared. We all saw it." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded vigorously. "That's right. He was gone for weeks." 6 weeks, I said calmly. "Standard recovery time for living kidney donors." "Kidney donors," Greg repeated like the words were foreign. "This is Edna. Tell them this is crazy." Edna finally found her voice. It came out as a whisper. "The medical bills, the insurance, everything was covered. I never understood why." "Because Thomas was the primary patient," Dr. Moore explained. "His insurance covered the donor surgery. Tyler was the secondary patient." "Primary patient," Tyler repeated, still staring at my scar. "You were the sick one?" "Not sick," I corrected. "Just giving you something you needed." Greg's composure was cracking. The perfect stepfather facade was falling apart in real time. "This is ridiculous. Even if this were true, which I'm not saying it is, but even if it were true, where were you during recovery? Where were you when Tyler was scared and alone?" "I was in the hospital," I said simply. "Room 347, one floor up from Tyler." Dr. Moore nodded. "Standard protocol. We keep donors and recipients on separate floors during initial recovery." "Tyler wasn't alone," I continued. "I watched the monitors, every heartbeat, every breath. The nurses gave me updates every hour." "Updates?" Edna's voice was getting stronger, sharper. "What updates? Nobody told me about any updates." "You were with Tyler. I didn't want to complicate things." Greg slammed his hand on the table. "Complicate things? You let us think you'd abandoned your son. I let you focus on Tyler's recovery without worrying about mine." "Without worrying?" Greg's voice was getting hysterical. "Edna cried herself to sleep for weeks thinking Tyler's father had run away." The words hit me harder than I'd expected. I looked at Edna, saw tears forming in her eyes. Real tears, not anger tears, guilt tears. "Thomas," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" "Medical team advised against it. Too much stress for Tyler. Too much pressure. They said it was better if families didn't know until after both patients were stable." "Families didn't know?" Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "What families?" Dr. Moore opened her folder, pulled out a thick stack of papers. "In cases of living donation between family members, we often recommend temporary confidentiality. Reduces emotional pressure on both patients." "Both patients," Tyler said slowly. "You were a patient too?" I nodded. "Major surgery. Missing an organ. 8 weeks of recovery before I could drive again." "That's why you looked so weak," Edna said, understanding dawning in her voice. "That's why you seemed so distant." "Post-surgical depression," Dr. Moore confirmed. "Common in major organ donors. Thomas lost 15 pounds during recovery." Greg was pacing now, his perfect hair messed up from running his hands through it. "This is insane. Absolutely insane. You're telling me that for 2 years I've been taking credit for saving Tyler's life with my kidney," I finished quietly. The room erupted in whispers, shocked conversations, people pulling out phones to Google kidney donation procedures. Mrs. Rodriguez was explaining to her husband in rapid Spanish. "But the adoption papers," Greg said desperately. "We're adopting Tyler next month, making it official." Tyler looked up at him with those 12-year-old eyes, still processing everything. "Greg, if my dad gave me his kidney, does that mean—" "It means your biological father made an incredible sacrifice," Dr. Moore said gently. "One of the most generous gifts one person can give another." "But Greg takes care of me," Tyler said, looking confused. "Greg helps with homework and comes to my games." "And that's wonderful," I said. "Greg is a good man. But Tyler, you need to understand something." I knelt down to his eye level, the way Dr. Moore had done earlier. "When you were dying, I didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. I would have given you both kidneys if it meant keeping you alive." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "You almost died?"
The surgery had risks, Dr. Moore said carefully. Any major surgery does, but Thomas accepted those risks to save your life. I'm sorry, Tyler whispered. I'm sorry I called Greg my real dad. Greg's face crumpled. Tyler, buddy, you don't have to apologize. I didn't know. But you let everyone think, Edna said, her voice getting angry now. You let everyone believe that Thomas had abandoned us. I believed it too, Greg shot back. What was I supposed to think? He disappeared. You were supposed to ask questions, Dr. Moore said firmly. You were supposed to wonder why Tyler got a kidney so quickly, why the insurance covered everything, why Thomas looked sick for months afterward. I thought he was depressed about the divorce, Greg said weakly. He was recovering from major surgery, Dr. Moore corrected. Surgery he underwent to save your stepson's life. The party had completely stopped. No one was eating cake. No one was making small talk. 50 people were witnessing the complete destruction of a 2-year lie. Tyler reached out and touched my scar. Actually touched it this time. Does it hurt? Sometimes, I admitted. But Tyler, you're alive. That's all that matters. I want to see the papers, Edna said suddenly. All of them. The surgical records, the consent forms, everything. Dr. Moore smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. She opened her manila folder completely, spreading documents across the table like evidence at a trial. And that's when the real devastation began. Dr. Moore spread the documents across the table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Surgical consent forms, preoperative blood work, compatibility test results, insurance authorizations, 2 years of postoperative reports, all bearing my name as the primary patient. These are Thomas's surgical consent forms, Dr. Moore announced to the crowd. Signed January 30th, 2022, 6 weeks before Tyler's transplant surgery. Edna picked up the first document, her hands shaking. January 30th? But Tyler wasn't diagnosed until January 12th, I said quietly. I volunteered for testing 18 days after his diagnosis. Greg grabbed another paper. This says compatibility testing, 98% match. His voice was getting smaller. One of the highest compatibility scores I've ever seen between a living donor and recipient, Dr. Moore confirmed. Thomas's kidney was essentially custom-made for Tyler's body. Mrs. Henderson leaned over Edna's shoulder, reading. It says here that Thomas underwent extensive medical and psychological evaluation. 3 months of testing. Standard protocol for living donors, Dr. Moore explained. We have to ensure they're physically and mentally prepared for the sacrifice. Tyler was reading over my arm, his 12-year-old brain trying to process medical terminology. Dad, what does laparoscopic left nephrectomy mean? It means they removed my left kidney through small incisions, I explained gently. Less invasive than open surgery, but still major surgery. Dr. Moore pulled out a clear plastic sleeve containing photographs. These are from the surgery itself, March 15th, 2022. The photos showed 2 operating rooms side by side. In one, Tyler lay unconscious on a surgical table. In the other, me. Same position, same vulnerability. Edna stared at the photos, tears streaming down her face. You were both at the same time. Simultaneous surgery, Dr. Moore confirmed. My team removed Thomas's kidney at 6:47 a.m. We had Tyler ready for transplant by 7:15 a.m. Greg was studying the insurance paperwork, his face getting paler by the second. This shows Thomas as the primary policyholder, Tyler as the dependent patient. Total surgical costs. $247,000, I said, covered by my insurance because I was the donor. $247,000, Edna repeated. Your insurance paid for Tyler's life. Dr. Moore pulled out another set of documents. Post-operative reports. Thomas experienced complications during recovery, infection at the surgical site, extended hospital stay. How extended? Tyler asked quietly. 10 days, I said. You went home after 4 days. I stayed for 10. Alone? Tyler's voice was small. I nodded. Alone. The room was completely silent now. Even the kids had stopped playing. Everyone was processing the magnitude of what they were learning. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke up, her voice thick with shame. Thomas, when we saw you looking so weak, so tired, we thought. You thought I was a deadbeat dad who couldn't handle responsibility, I finished. I understand. It looked that way. Greg was flipping through pages of medical records. It says here you lost 18 pounds during recovery, suffered from post-surgical depression, required physical therapy for 12 weeks. That's why I seemed distant, I said to Edna. That's why I couldn't carry Tyler or play catch for months. I was learning to live with one kidney.
Dr. Moore pulled out a medication list. Thomas takes 4 different medications daily, for life, to support his remaining kidney function and prevent complications. For life? Tyler looked scared. Kidney donors can live completely normal lives, Dr. Moore assured him. But yes, there are permanent changes. Dietary restrictions, regular monitoring, increased risk of high blood pressure and kidney disease later in life. Edna was sobbing now, ugly, honest sobs. "Oh God, Thomas, oh God, what have I done?" "You protected Tyler," I said simply. "You found him a father figure who was present and available. I don't blame you for that." "But I blamed you," she cried. "I called you a coward. I told everyone you'd abandoned us." Greg set down the medical records, his hands trembling. I told Tyler his real father didn't care about him. I told him." "You told him what you believed," I said. "What you were supposed to believe." Dr. Moore pulled out one final document. "This is Thomas's living will, updated before surgery. He listed Tyler as the sole beneficiary of his life insurance policy, $500,000, in case the surgery went wrong." The weight of that statement hit the room like a physical blow. "You could have died," Tyler whispered. "Any surgery has risks," I said. "But Tyler, I would have taken any risk to save your life." Dr. Moore nodded. "Kidney donation surgery has a mortality rate of approximately 0.03%. Small, but real. Thomas accepted that risk to give Tyler a chance at normal life." "Normal life," Tyler repeated, touching his side where his new kidney lived. "Your kidney?" "Our kidney now," I corrected. People throughout the room were crying. Mrs. Henderson was apologizing to her husband for judging me. Mrs. Rodriguez was crossing herself and whispering prayers in Spanish. Dr. Phillips from Tyler's school was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "There's more," Dr. Moore said quietly. "More? How could there be more?" She pulled out a printed email chain. "Thomas has been in regular contact with Tyler's medical team for 2 years, monthly check-ins on Tyler's progress. He requested detailed reports on every appointment, every test result, every milestone." Edna grabbed the emails, scanning them quickly. "You knew about Tyler's school physical, his sports clearance, his growth chart improvements?" "I knew everything," I said. "Dr. Moore sent me updates every month. Everything we celebrated, every milestone we cheered, every improvement in Tyler's health." Edna's voice trailed off. "Thomas celebrated too," Dr. Moore said. "Every good report made his sacrifice worthwhile." Greg was staring at his hands. 2 years. For 2 years I've been taking credit for being a good stepfather," I said firmly. "Tyler needed that. He needed someone who was present, available, stable. You gave him that." "But not life," Greg said quietly. "I didn't give him life." "No," Dr. Moore said simply. "Thomas did." Tyler looked around the room at all the crying adults, then back at me. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were 8 years old and scared. Because you needed to focus on getting better, not worry about my recovery. Because sometimes the people who love you most are the ones you see the least." "But everyone thought wrong," I said. "But that's not their fault. Adults sometimes jump to conclusions when they don't have all the information." Dr. Moore began gathering the documents. "I came here tonight because I felt Tyler and his family deserved to know the truth. Medical confidentiality has its place, but so does honoring sacrifice." "Honoring sacrifice," Tyler repeated slowly. He walked over to me, this 12-year-old boy carrying my kidney inside his body, and wrapped his arms. "Retribution. Continue around my waist, right where my surgical scar was hidden under my shirt." "I'm sorry," I said. "Greg was my real dad," he whispered into my chest. "You're my real dad. You saved my life." I hugged him back, careful not to squeeze too tight. My remaining kidney still got sore sometimes when pressure was applied wrong. "Tyler, Greg is a real dad to you too. There's room in your heart for both of us." Greg stepped forward, his face streaked with tears. "Thomas, I owe you an apology. I owe you more than an apology. You don't owe me anything. You loved my son when I couldn't be there. But I took credit for saving him when you literally saved him." The room watched this exchange in stunned silence. 50 people witnessing the complete reversal of everything they'd believed for 2 years. Dr. Moore packed the last of her documents. "Tyler, do you have any questions about the surgery? About what it means to have your father's kidney?" Tyler looked up at me. "Will you always be part of me now?" "Always," I said. "Part of my DNA is in your kidney. We're connected in a way that can never be broken." "Even if Mom and Greg adopt me?" Greg stepped back like he'd been slapped. "Tyler, after tonight, I think we need to reconsider those adoption papers. Edna wiped her eyes, finally speaking clearly for the first time all evening. Thomas, can you ever forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was best for Tyler. I called you a deadbeat dad. I let everyone believe you'd abandoned your sick child. I was planning to let Greg adopt Tyler and erase you completely. The truth of that statement hung heavy in the air. But you didn't know, I said. How could you know? I should have asked more questions. I should have trusted that the man I married, the man who wanted this child so desperately, wouldn't just disappear during a medical crisis. Dr. Moore cleared her throat. If I may, there's one more thing Tyler should know. We all turned to her. Your father didn't just donate his kidney and disappear. He's been paying for your ongoing medical care. Insurance covers the basics, but specialized medications, additional testing, nutritional supplements. She pulled out another stack of papers. Thomas has spent $47,000 of his own money over the past 2 years making sure you had everything you needed. $47,000 on an accountant's salary, while everyone thought he was a deadbeat dad. Edna stared at the receipts. The prescription supplements Tyler takes, the special vitamins, the quarterly blood work that insurance doesn't fully cover. All paid for by Thomas, Dr. Moore confirmed. Greg ran his hands through his hair. Jesus Christ, while I was playing hero, you were actually being one. I wasn't being a hero, I said quietly. I was being a father. Tyler looked around the room at all the staring faces, then back at me. In that moment, something shifted. You could see it happen. The 12-year-old boy making a decision that would change everything. Everyone, Tyler said, his voice getting stronger. Everyone, listen up. The room quieted completely. I want to tell you all something. This man, he pointed at me, is my real dad. His kidney is inside me right now, keeping me alive, and for 2 years I've been calling someone else dad while my real father sat quietly and let me. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Tyler, Greg started, but Tyler held up his hand. Greg, you're awesome, you really are. You helped with my homework and came to my games and made Mom happy, but my dad, my real dad, he gave me part of his body so I could live. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly now. Tyler, honey, we didn't know. But you should have asked, Tyler said with startling maturity. You should have wondered why my dad looked sick, why he seemed tired, why he had to miss some of my games. Instead, you just decided he was bad. The room shifted uncomfortably. 50 adults being lectured by a 12-year-old about jumping to conclusions. Edna knelt down next to Tyler. Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I kept you from understanding what your father did for you. It's okay, Mom, but I want things to change now. What do you mean? Tyler looked at Greg. The adoption papers. I don't want them anymore. Greg's face crumpled, but he nodded. I understand. No, you don't understand, Tyler said quickly. I want you to stay in my life. I want you to keep being my stepdad. But I want my real dad to be my real dad again. Dr. Moore smiled. Tyler, that's very mature of you. And I want to see the scar, Tyler announced. I want to see where my kidney came from. I looked around the room. 50 people waiting. Tyler's earnest face looking up at me, Edna nodding encouragingly, even Greg managing a supportive smile. I unbuttoned my shirt completely, pulled it aside to reveal the 8-inch surgical scar running along my left side, pink, raised, permanent. The room gasped collectively. Tyler reached out, tracing the scar with his finger. This is where you were cut open. This is where they removed the kidney that's keeping you alive, I confirmed. Does it hurt? Sometimes. But Tyler, every time it hurts, I remember why it's there, and it stops hurting. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke up, her voice thick with shame. Thomas, I owe you an apology. We all do. I called you a deadbeat to your face, Mrs. Henderson added. I judged you without knowing anything. Dr. Phillips from Tyler's school was shaking her head. The sacrifices we make as parents. Thomas, what you did is extraordinary. It's what any parent would do, I said. No, Greg said firmly. It's what an exceptional parent would do, what an exceptional man would do. He walked over to me, extended his hand. Thomas, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for taking credit for your sacrifice. I'm sorry for letting Tyler think less of you. I'm sorry for not asking the right questions. I shook his hand. Greg, you were there when I couldn't be. Tyler needed that. But he needed to know the truth more. Edna stood up, facing the room. Everyone, I need to say something. The crowd turned to her. For 2 years, I've been telling people that Thomas abandoned Tyler during his medical crisis. I've been wrong. Completely
Devastatingly wrong. Thomas didn't abandon Tyler. He saved Tyler's life. And while he was recovering from major surgery, I was falling in love with another man and planning to erase Thomas from Tyler's life completely. The confession hit the room hard. I don't know how to make up for that, Edna continued. I don't know how to undo 2 years of lies. But I'm going to start by telling everyone the truth. She pulled out her phone. I'm posting on Facebook right now, the real story, with pictures of Thomas's medical records. Everyone who heard lies about Tyler's father is going to hear the truth.
Edna, you don't have to, I started. Yes, I do. Tyler's father is a hero, a literal lifesaver, and everyone needs to know that. Dr. Moore nodded approvingly. The medical community has protocols for honoring living donors. Thomas, if you're willing, Phoenix Children's Hospital would like to recognize your sacrifice publicly. What does that mean? A ceremony, a plaque in our donor recognition wing, your story shared with other families facing similar decisions. Tyler's eyes lit up. Dad, you'd be famous. I don't need to be famous, I said. But other kids might need kidneys, Tyler said seriously. Other dads might be scared to donate. They should know it's okay. They should know heroes like you exist. Greg cleared his throat. Thomas, I'd like to make a proposal. Everyone turned to him. The college fund I mentioned, $45,000. I want to transfer it to Tyler's existing college fund, the one you've been contributing to all along.
Greg, that's not necessary. It is necessary. You've given Tyler life, health, and financial security. I've given him presence. The least I can do is contribute something real to his future. Tyler hugged me tighter. Dad, will you come to my next baseball game? I wouldn't miss it. And will you sit with Mom and Greg, like a family? I looked at Edna. She nodded through her tears, looked at Greg. He nodded too. Like a family, I agreed. The room erupted in applause, 50 people clapping for something real, something honest, something true. Tyler grinned up at me. This is the best remission party ever. And for the first time in 2 years, I believed him. 3 weeks later, the world looked completely different. Edna's Facebook post had gone viral. 47,000 shares, 12,000 comments. Local news picked it up. Father's secret kidney donation revealed after 2 years of being called deadbeat dad. Phoenix Children's Hospital called me twice. They wanted to feature my story in their donor awareness campaign. Sometimes the greatest gifts are given in silence, their slogan read, with my photo next to Tyler's. But the real changes were smaller, more personal. Tyler texted me every morning now. Good morning, Dad. How's our kidney feeling today? Always our kidney. Never your kidney or my kidney. Our kidney. The custody arrangement changed overnight. Instead of every other weekend, Tyler now spent 3 days a week with me. Edna insisted on it. He needs to know his father, she'd said. His real father. Greg handled it better than I'd expected. He even helped Tyler move his PlayStation to my apartment. You guys should have father-son game nights, he'd said. Make up for lost time. The adoption papers were officially withdrawn. Greg's lawyer called it a mutual decision based on new information. That was one way to put it. Dr. Phillips at Tyler's school sent me a formal apology letter. She'd also changed Tyler's emergency contact form. Instead of listing Greg first, then Edna, then me, it now read, Father, Thomas Davis, primary, Mother, Edna Johnson, secondary, Stepfather, Greg Williams, tertiary. Small changes, huge differences. Mrs. Henderson brought over a casserole with a handwritten note. I'm sorry I judged you. You're a hero. Mrs. Rodriguez stopped me at the grocery store to tell me her nephew needed a kidney transplant, and she'd shared my story with their family. You gave them hope, she said. The medical community response surprised me most. Dr. Moore invited me to speak at a kidney donor support group. 12 people attended. 3 were considering donating to family members but were scared of the surgery. The recovery was hard, I told them honestly. 6 weeks of feeling weak, physical therapy, dietary changes. But my son is alive. That makes everything else irrelevant. A woman named Janet was considering donating to her brother. What if he doesn't appreciate the sacrifice? She asked. You're not doing it for appreciation, I said. You're doing it for love. Appreciation might come later, or it might not. But love is immediate. Janet donated her kidney 3 weeks later. Her brother sent me a thank you card. The financial impact was unexpected too. Edna investigated our old insurance claims and discovered I'd overpaid for several of Tyler's medical expenses. You were double charged for the surgical suite rental, she explained, handing me a check for $8,400. The hospital admits it was an error. Greg contributed more than just the college fund transfer. He'd started paying half of Tyler's ongoing medical expenses. "It's not charity," he explained. "It's responsibility. I want to be part of Tyler's care, not just his entertainment." Tyler's relationship with both of us evolved into something I hadn't expected. He didn't choose sides or create distance. Instead, he seemed more secure knowing the truth, more confident, more appreciative. "Dad," he said during one of our Wednesday dinners, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Would you do it again? If I needed another kidney?" "In a heartbeat." "What if you only had one kidney left?" I put down my fork, looked at this 12-year-old boy who carried part of me inside his body. "Tyler, I would give you my last kidney, my heart, my liver, anything you needed to stay alive." "That's what fathers do." He nodded seriously. "That's what I thought." Greg said the same thing. "Greg did?" "Yeah, I asked him if he'd donate a kidney to me, and he said yes immediately. So did Mom. I'm pretty lucky, huh? 3 parents willing to give me organs. 3 parents. That's how he saw it now. The social media attention brought unexpected opportunities. A kidney foundation in Denver asked me to be their spokesperson. Living donation needs more advocates, their director explained. People like you who can show it's not just possible, but meaningful. I accepted. Not for fame or recognition, but because Tyler was right. Other kids needed kidneys. Other parents needed encouragement. If my story could save one more life, the publicity was worth it. The most meaningful change was the simplest one. Tyler introduced me to his friends now as my dad, not my biological father, or the guy who used to be married to my mom. Just my dad. And when people asked about Greg, Tyler would say, "That's my stepdad. He's awesome too. I have 2 dads, and they're both pretty great. 2 dads. Both pretty great." That was a family dynamic I could live with. 6 months later, Tyler and I were grocery shopping together when he stopped in the pharmacy aisle. "Dad, do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "Giving me your kidney, having to take medication forever, looking weak for so long that everyone thought you were a bad father." I knelt down to his eye level, the way Dr. Moore had done that night at the party. "Tyler, I would rather be misunderstood for the right reasons than praised for the wrong ones. I would rather sacrifice in silence than perform for applause." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's what real love is, isn't it? Doing the right thing even when nobody knows. Especially when nobody knows. I'm going to tell everyone at school about our kidney. Our kidney. Yeah, it started as yours, but now it's ours. We share it, like we share everything else." That evening, Edna called. "Tyler told me what you said at the grocery store, about preferring to be misunderstood for the right reasons. It's true. Thomas, I spent 2 years understanding you for all the wrong reasons. I won't make that mistake again. Real love doesn't need recognition. Real fathers don't need applause. Real sacrifice doesn't require an audience. But sometimes, just sometimes, the truth finds a way to surface, and when it does, everything changes." If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Have you ever sacrificed something important in silence? Tell me about it in the comments below.